Hello.
Yo, what's up, man?
Not much. How are you? Oh,
I'm all right, man. How about you? Can you hear me fine?
yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? I've got a dodgy mic cable. This is not very professional of me.
I can hear you loud and clear, dude.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
So how you doing?
Yeah, good. Good. Actually, it's just turned midday here on Saturday, and I've just cracked a beer. So why not?
Day drinking, man. Hell yeah. And
Why not?
I'm having a Canada Dry because I'm a Canadian, eh?
Well done.
Yeah, thank you for coming on the show, man. Really excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you've definitely been so far. I think this week, you and also Mary Z from Helium Prime have been like the two like most anticipated guests we've had so far. So, yeah, it's been great. But you've been saying this is like only what your third time doing something like this, or?
Yeah, this is heaps awkward. I think it's good. I love talking, and as you know, I do a podcast myself, but
Yeah.
the whole live thing freaks me out. It's like, oh my god, like, am I going to say the right thing or the wrong thing? But it's okay. I've got a beer now, so it's all good. Just relax.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, my third one.
Yeah. And I was gonna say it's because you're more experienced in doing this kind of thing than me. It's just because I've only been doing this for about 3 weeks now, and the whole idea for this was, I know you were on Gaia's stream a little while back, eh? Yeah, she's like in the music scene in the general vicinity that we're in, like Ontario, Quebec. She's like one of my best friends in the scene, and she had me on like I think like the second episode she ever did, and I'm like, people like this a lot, so I kind of figured why not. So
That's cool.
yeah. So I guess to get things started, like how is things down there, man? How's the COVID situation over there? Because last I heard, it's been you guys have got it pretty good down there so far. So how's it been?
Yeah, it's we are so lucky in comparison to the rest of the world. I mean, we've had our ups and downs. We've had some lockdowns across the country because for people that aren't familiar, in Australia we've got a number of different states and territories, and so we're all sort of divided up, sort of like a provincial sort of cross section across the country. And so each state has had its own version of lockdowns. We've had to remain indoors, wear the masks, all that sort of stuff. But we've been really lucky. I'm in Sydney, and we are almost back to normal. Most of the restrictions have lifted. The only thing that's not normal is gigs for us, and people have still got to remain seated at shows, which if you're playing acoustic music or something pretty chilled, then it's kind of nice. You can just sit back and have a few drinks and enjoy some live music. But for us that are playing sort of energetic heavy metal with a lot of guitar solos and sing-alongs and all that sort of stuff, playing to a seated room is kind of weird. So a lot of bands are just waiting until we can stand up again before we can start playing. But yeah, I think we're almost there. I think now that vaccines is just starting to get rolled out here in Australia as well, hopefully we'll be back to normal soon. So, but it's definitely been an interesting last 12 months, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I know what you mean with the whole like gigs thing, because here in Canada we're kind of in a similar situation. Like the problem I guess here is, I don't know how it is over there, but here being North America, it's just been really, really heavily politicized, the whole thing, and it's been very kind of frustrating for a lot of us because we feel like here in Ottawa, especially in Ontario, because in Ottawa there's even talk about because we've had like 2 big lockdowns so far.
Yeah.
Like we've had maybe like a couple of little ones, like a week here, week there. We've had 2 like multi-month lockdowns, and there's even talks of a 3rd one right now, which sucks. I don't know why, but the thing with the shows is that everything was open back in the summer. And I went to, because a buddy of mine's band played one of these socially distanced sit-down shows, because we were doing them here as well. And I'm in the camp of we're waiting until we can do them proper again, because it's just it just, to me, it was just lame. Like when I went there, it was just like the bands were good, obviously they played good, but at the same time it was like, it just felt like such a big like letdown, because like, oh, they're playing this really heavy metal music, and we all have to sit. And I actually found myself putting my mask on and a few times pretending to go to the bathroom just so I could walk around.
It's a weird one because so here in Sydney, we're probably the last place in the country that I can think of where we're still doing shows seated. Everywhere else in the country, you can stand up, and I think it's still limited capacity, social distance, but you can at least stand up and mingle. You don't have to sit down at a table. And it's hard because I think from a fan point of view, or even a musician, you know, part of this situation really sucks, and it's a weird vibe, and it's not what we're used to and what we want. And then the other side of it is like, well, maybe we just need to support with what we've got, because, you know, a lot of these venues are just trying to scrape in dollars just to stay open and alive, and bands, you know, some bands just want to get out there and try and get some money coming in as well. So you sort of like, oh man, I might not like the situation, but maybe I just need to sort of support as much as I can. So it's a weird thing, because I mean, now I'm not too worried about sort of getting sick myself now, because we've just been so lucky as far as, you know, transmissions and like how much is in the community. But for a while there, I was really reluctant to actually go to a show, because I was worried that I was encouraging behavior where maybe we should have been staying at home a bit longer and just playing it safe instead of just going out and socializing, sort of taking that short-term sacrifice. But yeah, and I look at like you guys in North America, like, you know, Canada and probably more specifically the US, and just the absolute chaos over there. And I just think, oh man, whatever problems we've got down here, it's nothing. We're cool.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, it's true. You guys, like, from the rest of the world, the way we've been viewing it is that Australia and New Zealand have it the absolute best. We're all like, oh, we wish we had it like them. But yeah, no, I know what you mean with the whole, because it's surprising that you guys are the only ones that you haven't done the standing thing yet. Because there's aside from Lord, there's a couple of other bands that I follow from Australia, one of which we've played with before because they came here once, was you know, Elm Street, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, great guys.
Yeah, we opened for them and Udo Dirkschneider. They both came to Ottawa, and we played with them, and I still follow them. And I remember seeing them posting, oh, this show and this show, and I'm like, oh, you lucky bastards. But I do know what you mean with the whole, like, encouraging behavior and all that, because not so much in Ontario as a whole, but in just Ottawa, in my city, we from the start didn't have that many cases. Like I remember, yeah, as I said, in the summer everything was open, and even now we've had for a city that's like 1 million people, we've had under 100 cases since like summer last year every day, which compared to like some other places in Ontario and in Canada is really good. Yeah. And, but yeah, no, as I said, that's why a lot of us are at the point now where, like you guys, where we don't really, a lot of us can think we can go out and be fine just because the case count here is so low. But the problem is that we always get counted with the general, like, Ontario, because all the problems are over in like Toronto and all that. They have like 90% of the cases over there, and that's where all the spread is, which it sucks. But you know, before I continue, I'm just gonna, since a few more people have joined, I'm just gonna do my little thing that I say for every one of these. So if you guys have any questions for Andy or for myself, then please let us know in the comments, and we will get to them. So I guess, but the real reason I guess we are doing this is obviously to talk music and be social in lieu of these times. So
sure.
So Lord is putting out their covers album, which I looked at the track listing and it's freaking sweet. So tell us, how did that how's the promotion for that been going? How did it come together? Just tell us about it.
Yeah, sure, man. And thanks so much. Yeah, we've been a band that's been known for cover songs for so many years. Like we would throw them into sets when we're playing live, and it's always a great way to win over a new crowd in particular. Like we would do those support shows with bigger bands, and the crowd would be like, arms crossed, going, yeah, let's see what these guys are all about. And yeah, that's it. We know that. We all know that pose.
Oh yeah.
And throwing a cover into the set is a great way to break the ice with new crowds, especially the metal crowd. And so we've always embraced that. And we've always just been fans of music. I mean, you know, like all of us, we started off listening to music, loving these amazing bands, and then that sort of motivated us to all pick up instruments and start or pick up a microphone and be in a band. So for us, we've always sort of dabbled with covers, you know, and when we were releasing albums over the years, we would have bonus tracks. So in Japan, you would always need a couple of bonus songs just to be competitive in the Japanese market. And then in Europe, and then we'd have some bonus tracks in Australia. And so over the years, we had all these songs in like these weird places all over the world. And so our friends, our supporters, our fans, we're always like, oh man, I want to get that song. I want to listen to that song. And so for us, we're like, oh man, well, it's on the Japanese press, which, you know, good luck trying to find it. It's probably out of print now and all this sort of stuff. So given what's happened over the past 12 months, rather than putting out a brand new album now, and it's only been a year or so, 18 months since the last studio album, we thought we'd do a bit of a compilation and put all these cover songs together onto one release. So it's nice and easy for people to find. And record a couple of new ones as well. You know, we've got so many cover songs. We've got stuff that's not even on this release that's half finished, which we know, I mean, given it's called Volume 1, there's more than likely going to be a Volume 2 at some point down the track. So we've got songs already for the next volume. So we've announced the album. We put out a single last week, which is a Savage Garden cover. So a bit of an out there sort of choice. And that's been going really well. And the album itself will be out on the 2nd of April. So we're just doing a little bit of PR, a little bit of chatting with people, doing great stuff with yourself as well. And it's just, it's been fun. It's been fun to promote something, because I think we've all been sort of sitting at home, twiddling our thumbs going, what can we do? We've got to do something. So it's nice to be able to talk again about music.
Yeah, and absolutely, and that's kind of like, that's sort of half the reason why I started doing this show, was because before, like, when Gaia had me on hers, I actually, like, at the beginning of the pandemic, we lost 2 members, and I kind of went through this sort of depression through 6 months where I didn't do anything, didn't post anything, didn't do anything musically except for like look for new guys.
Yeah.
And I even remember, I don't know if you remember, I even remember hitting you up, you and Matt Bacon, who was on here earlier. I said, okay, we have new members now, and I'm posting and no one's seeing it. What the fuck? So I remember I went and asked you guys for some advice, and it worked out really well. And so that's why I kind of figured, because we have some new material coming out very soon. It's just things take, obviously, as you know, with albums, even the simplest thing as a little bit of artwork takes freaking forever. So yeah, that's why I started doing this now, was because just to be able to be social again and talk music and all that. And in terms of your guys' cover album, like, I absolutely loved the some of the picks. Like, I think you must have saw my comment when you said, you guys did an ex-Japan song? They're one of my absolute favorite bands. And Valcata is in the comments and said, Savage Garden cover, gotta hear that. Yeah, it's really good. It's
cheers,
really
hope you like it.
Yeah, I love when metal bands do like covers of non-metal songs. Like, that's something we've talked about doing for the longest time. Like, I've been pushing the guys to do a rock set song for ages now. So yeah. Oh, we have a comment for you, actually. Redeemer of Souls. I see what you did there.
Nice.
Hey. Says here, Andy, how do you approach recording bass for the covers? Do you try to do a similar style as your original contactor? Do you try to do a similar style of original, or do you prefer sticking to your own twist on them?
Yeah, over to me. It depends on the song. So a lot of the songs that we've recorded over the years, I mean, there's stuff that I recorded like 10 odd years ago, and there's a mixture of where I was at that point in time, my skill level, my experience playing music, but also, I guess, the overall, sometimes we discuss, like, what's the overall vibe of the song? Like, what do we want to achieve out of this? Do we want to just do almost like a carbon copy version of the song with some heavier guitars, or do we want to really mix it up? And I think for the most part over the years, we played most of the covers fairly straight. We haven't really turned things upside down. Like a really amazing example of a great cover song is Nevermore's Sound of Silence.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Off what album was that? Was
I,
that
it's off.
Dead Heart in the Dead World?
Yeah, yes. I literally I have it on my shelf right here, so I was just going to pull it out and be like, yeah.
So that's an example of like a song where they've really just turned it into their own song. Like if you hadn't heard the original, you just think that was a Nevermore song, just a bit more chilled out. Well, not chilled out. Actually, it's probably the opposite. It's really they tore into that one. But I think for us, for the most part, most of our covers are fairly straight, and I think we've tried to pay tribute to the originals as much as possible. So I don't think we've really sort of gone out of the way to do something like crazy different. I think we've tried to stay pretty close to the original. I think for us, it's more of a, like, I guess the point of doing covers for us has always been about just enjoying the song and just having like, it's for our own amusement rather than trying to make a statement. And so I think that's probably why we've taken a bit more of a straight approach with cover songs rather than sort of completely turning them upside down and just taking the lyrics only, or taking a bit of a vibe and that's about it and turning it into our own. So a very long-winded answer, Saul, but yeah, more or less fairly straight to the original that I would approach them over the years.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've noticed, at least with a lot of paying tribute to a lot of metal songs, is that I find that with, like, as you mentioned with Nevermore, and even Werrell Dane himself on his solo album doing like a Sisters of Mercy cover and making it a metal song. Yeah. And I feel like when you're a metal band covering an older metal song, there isn't really much you can do to it. Like, because at least that's the problem we've had with, that's not the problem, but the thing I've noticed whenever we do covers is like, because bring it back to what you mentioned, how you'll pull out a cover if you're talking to playing for like a new crowd or whatever, just kind of get them on. No, I understand. Like, we do the same thing. Like, I remember we had there's a story when right before the pandemic, like right at the tail end of 2019, we went and played in Toronto, which we played a bunch of times already. But anybody who lives around here knows that the Toronto crowd is very, very hard. Like, they're the kind of, it's so weird. They're the kind of crowd who they will barely ever cheer. They'll barely ever regardless of how good the band is. They'll never cheer. They'll always just be all like, but then they'll come in after the show and be like, "Oh, that was great, man. That was awesome." Blah blah blah. And it's so weird. But one time when we played the last time, we were doing in our set, we had Heavy Metal is the Law from Halloween as like our closer. Cool. And literally as soon as we're like holding the last note, the last song, and then I say, "Oh, this one's by Halloween. This one's about the reason we're all here, because heavy metal is the law." And then I see half the room go like, and then they all just run to the front. I'm like, I was expecting them just to be like, but no, they all just went. So you're right. Like, that's one thing I think a lot of people should do, I'd say, because you have all these people who they're like, "Oh, you shouldn't do covers, blah, blah." I'm like, no, but if you're a new band, they're a good way to get people on your side, especially if it's something that's not common, like everybody will do Enter Sandman, or everybody will do Master of Puppets, but if you do like as you guys say, like an X-Japan song or a Blind Guardian song or whatever, they're bands that people know enough that they'll be like, "Oh, this is really cool. They're playing this song from this band that I like that I haven't heard a band play before," except, so.
Well, I've got 3 examples where, like, straight metal songs have worked really well for us. So the first one's Creeping Death by Metallica. It's such an obvious heavy metal song that everybody knows, and if anything, it's not the most original pick out there, like when you're thinking of songs to cover. But that's one of those songs where it's so obvious that at times people don't expect it because it's just so obvious. Like why would anybody pick that? And so that was always like either an end of set closer for us or towards the end of the set. And so when you start off with that, like, it's so distinct that you don't even have to announce it. You just play those first riffs, and everyone just goes, "Oh yes!" Like, wow. And so everyone's mind's blown because it's so obvious that people aren't expecting it. So like, it's so sort of it's such a contradiction. So that works really well for us. And then we've got 2 covers on the album, which one's a brand new recording, and the other one has been on the Japanese version of Fallen Idols. And so one of them is Reckless by Judas Priest off the Turbo album. So it's a metal cover. You can't do too much with it. It is what it is, but it's not a song that often is covered by bands. It's on an album that, traditionally Priest fans wouldn't go to. It's probably loved a bit more now, late years down the track, but at the time people hated it. And Reckless is such a mad song. It's got some guts to it. And for Tim to be able to sing this, it's in his sweet spot. It's in his comfort zone, and he smashes it. And I mean, I'm biased, of course, when I say it, but it sounds really, really cool. And so for us, that song will be hopefully in sort of playlist rotation when the album comes out on the 2nd of April. And what I'm hoping with that is that even though it's not going to be any surprise, I think it's just going to be a fresh take on a classic, and people are going to go, wow, like I wasn't expecting to hear this from another band. And hopefully that'll be the gateway to then discover our back catalogue and go from there. The other track, which is the same sort of example, is Judas Be My Guide by Maiden.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a song that I think there have been a few bands that have covered it over the years, but it hasn't been something that's been sort of very common. But it's one of those songs where you listen to it and you go, well, there's not too much we can do with it. It is what it is. It's already a classic metal song. And when you listen to our version, it's more or less, it's just, I mean, we haven't done anything to it. We've just added the extra distortion to it. Tim's vocals are in there. I mean, he's suited for Bruce Dickinson to a T, and it's just Lord playing an Iron Maiden cover. There's nothing more fancy than that. It is what it is. But the people that have heard that song absolutely love our version. So it's interesting because the way we've worked the track listing as well is that we've sort of rotated between a heavy metal song and like a pop song, and like metal and non-metal, and we try to keep it sort of mixed up, so we're getting the best of both worlds. So people are going to be surprised and also be just really happy to hear things that they're already familiar with as well. So hopefully people really dig it.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Reckless from Turbo, because as you said, that's an album that people wouldn't expect. I have a very hot take here. I am still waiting for someone to cover Parental Guidance at some, because everybody hates that song, and I don't know why. I love it personally. So who knows? We might,
Yeah.
And
do it, man. Do it.
Yeah, who knows? We might.
Song.
Yeah, well, if we're talking about covers, I'm going to do a little quick shameless plug, because we're talking about this kind of thing. We actually recently just did a Running Wild song. Actually, we did Port Royal, and it was for a small compilation off a small label out of Czech, I think.
Yep.
And yeah, it's called Wild Privateers. It's like this underground tribute to Running Wild, and then there's some bands like Us, and Blazing Stone is on it as well, and a few others. And and as I said, it's one of those things where even though a song, even though if you play it straight, I always try and find a way to make it different. Like, from the people who have heard it, they say the thing they really appreciate is the fact that my vocals are so much different than Rolf's, so I kind of sing it my own way. And two, it's because we actually added keyboards. Like, a lot of people would be like, oh, blasphemy, but people, when they hear it, they're like, oh, the keyboards actually make it better. I'm like,
yeah,
told you. I told you. And also, you mentioned doing Creeping Death. That's actually a perfect segue into the next thing I was going to ask you about, is you guys played that when you played Progpower, eh?
Yep, that's right.
So what was that whole experience like? Because Progpower, I went to my first one back in 2019, like the last one they did, and it was easily like one of the best experiences of my life. It was great, and I remember hearing about you guys playing it, and you guys obviously did the live CD, the live DVD for it.
Yep.
So for a band from as far away from the States as you guys, how was it? Like, how was the whole experience for you guys playing it and the weekend? And so tell us a bit about that.
Easily one of the best experiences I've ever had. Like, it was surreal. It was, I went there the year before we played. So I went over there just to check it out. It was a good excuse to sort of go to a cool and unique festival in the United States. And so I went over there with a few promo CDs, and I started hustling and sort of, doing a bit of networking. And I knew Milton, and Glenn had been in contact with us for years. He was an old school Dungeon fan from years ago, and he used to run, well, I think he still does, the Ultimate Metal Forum as well. So we had we had a forum on there, and so we sort of had a connection with Glenn. But yeah, we sort of was speaking to Milton, and sort of he just said, look, you know, we'd be keen to have you guys at some point in time. And I just said, well, I'm going to come over and say hello. And I think that sort of really helped. It was sort of me sort of saying, hey, we're serious. I've come from the other side, the arse side of the world. So we're ready to go when you are. So that first year that I went as a fan was just surreal. It was amazing. I made so many friends there. It's such a community vibe. 4 days of just like fantastic, like power metal and prog and just metal, and just some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. And I, you know, got to talk about Lord and share some stuff, and had some, as I said before, some promo things I was giving out to people. And went home, and then a few months later, we worked it out with Milton, and we announced that we're going to be playing the following year. And so when we went back, we were the first band on the first day. And it's like, you know, if you think about any festivals in Europe or anywhere else, you think, oh man, that opening spot at a festival, oh man, you're gonna, like, there's not gonna be anyone there, tumbleweeds, you know, everyone's still waking up. And so we were a bit worried, and we thought, oh, we don't know how this is gonna go. And the good thing about Progpower is that they don't shortchange any bands. Every band gets like an hour set minimum. I think it's only the headliners that get a bit more than an hour. So they're really generous to all the bands that play. So we had a full hour set, which was fantastic. And the curtains were across, and as they opened up, we had a packed room. They were all there. They were ready to go. And as we started playing, I'm looking out and just seeing all of these people that I connected with the previous year. And they're pointing at me, I'm pointing at them, and I'm looking probably a little bit too happy and not very heavy metal on stage, because I'm just like, oh, it's you, oh, it's you, oh, it's you. And just, I mean, you know, the show went so quickly. You know, it's hard to recall what happened and what didn't happen. And we're just so glad that we recorded. And, you know, I can every once in a while go back and watch a video and just go, oh yeah, that's right, it happened. Yeah, wow. So it's such a unique thing that Glenn, Milton and Nathan have done with Progpower over the years. They've built a community. They've got loyal people. It's a family. They always refer to it as a family. And I think that's why it works. People have used it as their yearly vacation to go and reconnect with their extended family, their heavy metal family. And it's just, it's so cool. It's amazing. It's why it's been so successful. And I feel for the guys with the cancellation of last year, where they didn't have that opportunity to reconnect with everybody again. So hopefully they can kick back into it this year. Fingers crossed. But I want to go back again. I keep telling them after we played in 2016 that I would be back every year afterwards, and I haven't followed through with that. So I'm getting a bit of shit. So every time I say I'm coming, they're like, yeah, right. We'll So I'm just going to have to just rock up and not tell them. And they'll be like, oh, you actually rocked up this time. I'm like, yeah, easy. So yeah, very cool experience, man. Very cool. I definitely want to go back again.
Yeah, because it's like, it's one of those things where, like, not even from like a fan's point of view, but also just from any band that's in our genre, that's kind of like, maybe next to like Wacken, that's like one of the bucket list kind of places is Progpower. And as I said, it was, for me too, it was like one of the, probably the best concert experience I went to. I said I went in 2019. And one thing that I remember I kind of regret doing, well, not doing actually while I was there, was I tried to do a little bit of networking there as well. Like, our song was on the compilation.
Yeah,
we
cool.
we had one of our tracks on the compilation, and I was kind of like trying to, like, you know, chill while I was there. But one of my favorite stories that happened when I was there, and it was one of those like was I go into the oh, my drummer Panos is in the chat. Sup, man? So what happened was I go into the vendor's room, right? And I'm looking at the Nuclear Blast table, because Nuclear Blast obviously has like their own table there. And this dude comes up to me and we start chatting. And I assumed at that point that he was just a guy that the festival hired to work at the table. And I'm like, oh, we're chatting. And he's asking me about, he's like, oh, are you in a band? I said, yeah, we're called Lycanthro, blah, 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 blah. And then I said to him, and I asked him, do you work for Nuclear Blast, or are you just someone that they hired? He goes, no, I'm the A&R guy. I'm like, wait, what? And then he like asked me if I have anything to give him. And I'm like, because I didn't. I was like, oh shit, no. So he was like, yeah, exactly. So he's like, oh, do you have anything you can give me? And I'm just like, I don't. I didn't realize because I didn't. I didn't know, because I know that like for Progpower days you can meet the bands and all that, but I was so surprised about how many industry people were there. Like not only just Glenn and Milton and Nathan and all them, but just how many like people from labels show up there as well. It blew my mind. So that's why obviously COVID put a stop to that. But I had tickets for this for last year, and my plan was, I'm like, okay, I'm going to bring everything. So I'm just going to bring everything. And I was like, I'm even going to see if I can strike up a deal beforehand with one of the tables so I can like give them some of our CDs and here, sell them. You can keep some of the profit. I don't care. Just freaking put it, you know. And the other funny thing about that experience was the year I went, I was only one of 2 people at the entire festival that I actually stayed in the same hotel the bands did.
Oh, nice.
Which was, cool. Oh yeah, that was surreal, because I went because my dad came with me, and he didn't go to the festival, but he was like, oh, you go do that, and I'll do my own thing during the day, like go to all the touristy places or whatever. And the night before, we're sitting in the hotel having dinner, and we booked the hotel pretty late, so it was like a 15-minute walk from the venue. It wasn't like the Artmore or anything. It was a bit farther. So I said, oh, that's fine. It's not a big deal. And then we're eating in the night before, and then I see Insomnium walk in. And then I see Sanctuary walk in. And I'm like, this is the hotel the bands are staying at. And then throughout the rest of the day, not all of the bands, but most of the bands, I didn't even like have to do the meet and greets. I just met them at the hotel. Like my favorite one in terms of like was Galnerius. Galnerius stayed at the same hotel as us, and I remember going outside while Sayu was having a smoke and said to him, oh, I'm a guitar player too, and you're one of my favorite guitar players. And he seemed genuinely surprised that people outside Japan know who they are. Like he was like, he was like, oh, thank you very much. And I'm just like, dude, it's so great. And like, yeah, no, and I could tell they didn't realize how many people were there mainly for them, myself included. And yeah, and it's and then the other one, I actually got to hang out with Subsignal from Germany. Yeah, because the other guy who was staying at the hotel as me, who was a fan, was one of the sponsors actually of one of the bands, and me and him like got very friendly during the whole weekend. And literally, I come back from the show one night, and I hear all this. There's a kind of like a barricade, like a barrier, and there's like a table behind it. I hear a bunch of loud noises, and then he's like, "Oh, James, here, this is Subsignal. Want to hang out with us?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, yeah." So it's just absolutely amazing, that whole thing. So we got a comment here from Stephanie Scully. Dude, everything is so cool there at Prague. Everyone's so kind to talk to. The merch room is mega sweet too. Yeah, like it's true. Like everybody just becomes good friends there, and it's also hilarious to know who where people come from. You know, like I think when I told everybody I came from Ottawa, Canada, everybody's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah."
There's a lot of fans that come from all over the world. There's every once in a while you have a few Australians that come over. There's I can't remember his name. Is it Koji from Japan? I think he's been going consecutive years for years. There's people from Europe, people from Latin America. There's just, and of course, like every corner of the United States, people are just coming in. And I think just one thing, like you mentioned before, like they've got the signing sessions where they'll go and sign stuff, and that's really cool. And it's a great opportunity to. I mean, some of the guys are so dedicated; they just rock up with like booklets of the entire back catalog, and then every side project that you've been on. And they're like, "Can you sign everything?" It's like, okay, all right, let's get started. And super cool. But I think the thing that I've heard a lot of bands say about Progpower is that it's so chilled out, and everybody is so chilled out that goes that they can walk around, have a drink, and just talk to anybody, and it doesn't feel like they're getting swamped and annoyed or punished by all these fans. And so what you do find, as you saw, is that there'll just be band members walking around like throughout the festival, and instead of like using their show as one date and then they disappear and they don't show up again, some of these guys actually hang around for the full 4 days because they just want to chill out and have some drinks and have some fun. And so there's I mean, I just remember being there and just sort of standing around with, like, I don't know, like speaking of Nevermore, like Van from Nevermore, like he was there because Ghost Ship Octavius was playing, and so we were just hanging out having a beer, and I'm like going, oh, dude, like, you know, this godless endeavor, like worship, you know, dreaming neon black. Oh man, and
Yeah.
but just having beers and just talking shit, and that was what the 4 days was. And so I think from a band point of view, it was awesome because you could network, you could build connections, and just have a really fun time without sort of feeling pressured to keep a face and keep things together and sort of be trying to be ultra professional or distant from people. So I just found it really, really, really fun. But I must say, dude, like absolutely, you should just hustle big time. When you go back, bring your flyers, bring your CDs, bring cards, whatever you need to do, and link up in advance, do all that sort of stuff, man. That's what I live and breathe. I love doing that stuff. So yeah, definitely take advantage of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I even remember, like, as I said, like, not only just at the hotel, but like I always saw all the band members around. Like, I remember talking a lot with Joseph Michael from Witherfall, and we'd literally high five each other, each other down the street, you know. And then I think the year I went, I like had two very big like moments because two of my idols were playing that year vocally were like Tommy Kervik and Hansi from Blind Guardian and Tommy from Camelot, and they were both there, and I was just like, oh. But what you mentioned about like the whole like hustle and networking and all that, that actually, again, is a perfect segue into the next thing I wanted to start talking about. Is I guess the real meat of this conversation I wanted to talk about is obviously, like, aside from obviously playing in Lord and all that stuff, you're very well known for not only just the Antisocial podcast, but just being someone who's just really good at social media. Like, I know you're kind of like in the same group of like you and Matt Bacon and Curtis, obviously, who's going to be on the show soon as well.
Hey, Curtis. And by the way, just speaking of Curtis, he tried to steal me for a live stream that was happening at the same time as this, and I said, no way, man, I've got something more important. I'll come back to you. So Curtis almost tried to steal me away, but he didn't know. So.
Damn it, Curtis! Oh wait, was it for their new C2 thing?
I think we're going to do one of them, but I think he's doing some live streams at the moment as well. So it might be for the same thing. I'm not sure, but
yeah. I won't spoil it too much, but I'm doing, aside from him coming on this, I'm also doing something with him soon too.
Oh, good.
So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, yeah, Curtis is a great dude. It's funny, he's not actually our PR guy. We have someone else, but he's been like really just mainly because I'm friends with Gaia. That's how he kind of found out about us. And he's like, cool. Oh, I know you work with this guy, but I'll have you on my stuff too because I like your music. And I'm like, oh, sweet, thanks, dude. And yeah, he's a very sweet dude. But my question to you, and you can kind of tell this when you're talking about like your cover album or Fallen Idols or whatever, is the main thing I wanted to ask you is what is your typical process for marketing an album? Because I know that you mentioned earlier that you have labels and labels and distributors in like Japan and in Europe and all that. So what's your process for promoting an album, and how do you consolidate all these different contacts you have without getting overwhelmed? Or do you get overwhelmed sometimes? You know, so
I'm in a constant state of just feeling overwhelmed all the time. It's like, oh my God, is my world about to fall apart?
Yeah.
But interesting thing. So yes, of course, you know, the upcoming Covers album that's out on the 2nd of April is what we're promoting at the moment. And an interesting thing just to link into that is that last year when we were talking about doing this, we sort of weren't taking the release very seriously. We're sort of going, well, you know what, like it's just something to keep the machine moving and just put something out there, but not really take it overly seriously. And I sort of made a comment to say, look, we kind of need to treat this like a legit studio album, like a new release, and do as much as we can where possible to take the same approach, PR and marketing and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, we announced the album about a week ago. We put out the single, and at the moment we've actually got Curtis doing our PR this time around. So he helped us out last year with our Chaos Reigning single/EP, which was really good. And Curtis and I have got a great relationship now that we've built over the past 18 months or so. And so he's helping us out with that. And it's kind of like, it's a bit Captain Planet-ish. It's like our powers combined, we are Captain, I don't know, Lord or whatever it is. And so I'm doing a lot of PR from my side with my immediate circles and the contacts that I've built from my side, especially in the Australian industry. And Curtis is really reaching other areas that we normally wouldn't have had any prior connection with. So with us both doing this in unison, it's kind of working really well. And we're only a week in. So for us, it's a 4-week campaign leading up to the release of the album. And it's just a case of making sure as many people get to hear the album in advance for reviews and to be able to do interviews. I've seen a few, because I've done a couple of other interviews today. I've seen little pop-ups on my phone from Curtis just flicking me more and more email interviews. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got to type out another email interview. But, you know, all these things help. And so it's just a case of building it as we go. But I'm always trying different things as well. Like it's you know, I'm trying to treat the band in a non-traditional way. So when you're in a band, you're always thinking about what are the typical things. We need a press release or an EPK. We send it out to our webzine and our media contacts. They review. You might get an interview. You might get a feature. You know, you might do a video clip at some point as well. But what I've been thinking a lot more over the years is how do you create the story from the release? What's the angle? What's something juicy that someone can latch onto? Because a lot of people in the media, you know, they're getting press releases all the time. They want something different. And it could be like, what's the storyline behind a song or the album itself? What's an overarching theme or whatever it might be? And then they can create a topic of discussion that's out of that. And this is kind of what newspapers do and magazines and like mainstream media. They're trying to find like the human story. And so we're just trying to find ways to sort of capitalize on that. And just out of like a pure mistake, I was hustling quite hard with our Savage Garden cover, and I'd been talking to Darren from Savage Garden, and I'd been in contact with him in the past. And so when we released it, I flipped him a copy of the song and said, hey, have a listen. And so he gave a bit of social media love on Twitter and retweeted it and said how much he loved the song. And so his fans are getting into it, which is fantastic. And straight away I'm thinking, what would the media do with this? So I grabbed his quotes. I created a MailChimp press release again. And so like 48 hours after the first MailChimp, I sent another one out and used a really cheesy buzz headline saying like Savage Garden frontman praises Australian heavy metal cover or something like that. And then I used his quotes. I talked about how they've sold 23 million albums over the course of their career, and Darren's now got a successful solo career. I did a picture with a very young Darren Hayes with the Lord, not like this, that's another cover, To the Moon and Back artwork, and put them together. And then I went back into the existing spiel about what the album is and just doing the usual plugs as well. And so a couple of media places picked that up just because it had an angle, it had something different. So for me, it's always about finding stories and to just not always just be thinking about what are the typical things that a band does. So for us, leading up to the release date now, a lot of it is hustling to get as many pre-orders as possible on our Bandcamp page. So it's like $9 Australian, which is probably like 50 cents anywhere else in the world, to get like 23 cover songs and over 2 hours of podcasting where Tim and I dissect every single song on the release and talk about the stories behind it. So it's like almost 4 hours of content for like $9 Australian. And so we're trying to get as many pre-orders for that because we know that's going to help us get into the Australian charts if we get a lot of pre-sales. So that's my focus over the next few weeks, and we're potentially doing a video clip. So we're starting to do some test filming this week coming. So we'll see how that one goes, and just a number of other things in the works just to try and get creative. So it's I think one thing that you probably are aware of, and I think a lot of other people would agree, is that there's no blueprint. There's no there's no set structure of how to promote an album or, you know, lead up to the release of an album. There's lots of things that probably basics that you should be doing, like the EPK, the press release, having someone help you out with PR and doing some interviews and things like that. But there's just so many things where you're really limited only by your creativity. Whatever you can think of, just try it. And this is why, like, this is what I live and breathe for. Like, it sounds so bad when I verbalize it, but I love this almost as much, if not more, than playing live. I am totally like I've taken over sort of over the years, like band management, PR, sort of marketing guy, the merch guy, sort of the guy who runs around trying to organize all the business related stuff. And I love the trial and error. I love, like, it's almost like being in a chemistry lab and just like pouring things in and just seeing what, oh shit, okay, that don't do that one again, that didn't work. Or, oh my God, I found this weird concoction of like these elements that have actually made or provide some success for the band. So it's a really exciting time, and it opens up another version of creativity, because we're obviously being creative when we're putting music together, but I think creativity extends far beyond just music, and it's just about anything you do in life, anything that you're just trying to do, new things, new ideas. It's all creativity. So this is a really fun time for me at the moment, and getting to talk about it. As you can tell, I'm waffling because I'm so passionate about it. So
No, I love it. Great. Yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, that's why with me personally, with my band, that's why I was seeking out advice from people like you and Matt and all that, was because during that sort of dry spell that we had at the beginning of the pandemic, one thing that I found out is, because I never used to do the Instagram stuff. It was always one of the bandmates that left. He used to do it.
Yep.
And he gave it to me when he left, and now I do all the social media, and I've had to spend this time like learning how to do certain things and how to promote yourself certain ways through different means on different social medias. And and as I said, it is fun. It is fun, but it's also very stressful too, you know? So it's kind of like it's like a very balanced yin and yang kind of combination of both, because it's really fun to come up with new ways to promote yourself. But as I said, it's also stressful because there's also always the looming kind of sort of like, oh man, are people gonna like the album, blah blah blah, you know? It's like every musician has the insecurities and all that. But
I think the other thing, just to quickly mention, and I think just to give some reassurance as well, is that when you've got a band of say 4 or 5 people, not everybody in the band can be the social media star. Not everybody's an extrovert. I mean, I'm not even an extrovert really, but like, no, not everybody should have that same drive to be constantly promoting themselves. So for us in our band, Tim's fairly social online. He'll interact with things. Mark, our guitarist, no way. I mean, you can barely get him to post anything. And if he does post something, he's usually posting something about his ESP guitar collection. He's an ESP fanatic, and he's got so many amazing collectible guitars. And what we've learned is that we've all got our strengths that we lend to the greater thing, which is Lord, our band. So, you know, Mark's an amazing songwriter. He contributes heavily to not only songwriting, but the recording process. Tim is an absolute wizard with a lot of the studio stuff and writing and recording. And, you know, for me, like, I've just lent so hard into the management, the business side, the PR, the marketing, and all that sort of stuff. So I think in any band, you should just, as long as you've got somebody who has a little bit of that fire to be interacting with people online, then don't stress about everybody else not sort of being up to that level. I think you just need somebody. And then if you get any extras from your band to help out at times, then that's a bonus. And the other thing that's really important to note as well is that just being on social media sometimes in general is more than enough. So like I said with Mark's like an ESP fanatic, and he will very rarely talk about the band, but him just talking about ESP guitars is indirectly promoting the band anyway. And he's part of like these communities of guitar freaks, guitar nerds, who all talk about different specs and collectible guitars and all this sort of stuff. And through that, people discovered Lord because they know Mark. And so Mark actually helps the band socially by talking about a niche interest of his. And so really in a band, just talk about what you love. Like, you don't have to talk about the band. Like, just talk about whatever the hell you're passionate about, man. At the moment, like, I did an interview before and someone asked me, what books am I reading? And I told them I'm reading customer service books, which is the most boring thing to be saying. I could have thought, I've got a bookshelf of books here. I could have like said, oh, I'm reading a book about serial killers or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I said, no, I'm reading books about customer service, like really bland business books about how to get excellent customer experience and services. And, but you know, that's something I love to talk about. And as a result, I've found other people that are into self-development or leadership or customer service stuff, whether they be in bands themselves or outside of music altogether. And as a result, they've actually discovered Lord through an interest that I have. So I think people just need to talk about what they love and not stress so much about just whoring the band out all the time. Just be yourself, be genuine, and people will connect and discover after the fact.
Yeah, and it's actually a similar kind of dynamic in my band too, because like me, even though like I'm the I'm like the big social media guy in the band, and all the guys know that. And I'm someone that I can definitely say I definitely am very extroverted. That's why this whole pandemic has been terrible for me.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I've started doing this, is just mainly not only just to talk to people and get to know them and talk metal and promotion and all that. It's just because to be social again. And so I'm usually the one who's whoring us out on social media. But like, for example, in terms of like our members, like our bass player Stu, he's very big into like the model painting community. Like not like
cool.
Yeah, like not like cars or anything, but like the like
Warhammer sort of stuff.
Yeah. He's really big into that, and he'll be like, and to the point where he like even makes a little bit of side money from doing it. So he'll like start doing stuff like if he does like a painting stream, he'll have us playing in the background or stuff like that. And or as the same thing, our your guitar player, our lead guitar player, Forrest, is another one that you know he's very like doesn't use social media very much at all. He has an Instagram page, refuses to get a Facebook page, which is which is it's whatever. But at the same time, the dude is probably out of the four of us is the best pure player I've ever seen. Like I even said like a little while ago when I announced the new members, I did a little fun kind of bio thing on each member like over 4 days, and when I got to him, I always put like a fun fact, and he was the only one I couldn't think of one for, because the rest of us I always put like, for example, for me I put, oh, James likes sappy power ballads, ... not even joking, because I'm not joking. Yeah, oh yeah, they're the best. Or like Panos, our drummer, I'll say, he's the oldest in the band. He's originally from Greece, and he played in a Greek thrash band back in the day called Memorane, which they are kind of a really cool case because, and I know a lot of people don't believe me when I say this, but look it up, it's true, is that his old band, after he left and moved to Canada, they actually had some pretty famous members actually at some points, not for very long, but like for a little bit. Like they had the drummer that replaced him on the album that they put out after he left was actually Nick Menza from Megadeth.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And whenever I tell someone that, they're like, oh, bullshit. I'm like, I pull up Metal Archives, like, look for yourself. Yeah, so like he's like the very wise kind of one. And then, but as I said with Forrest, is that even though he doesn't really do anything on social media, we value him a lot just because he's the best pure player, best ear in the band. He plays like, well, as I said, for the little bio, I couldn't think of anything for him. So the thing I put was, it is said that when Luca Turilli and Michael Schenker have an unholy love child, this is what you get, or something like that. And it's true, because his playing is like Luca Turilli meets Michael Schenker, and it's incredible, because he'll like 1 minute be doing like the crazy sweeps, and then the next minute we'll be doing like all the little pentatonic groove stuff like Michael Schenker, So yeah, so I guess like band dynamics are kind of like that, and it's cool. But
yeah, right. You got to bring up their individual personalities, and sometimes less is more. So if you've got a guitarist who isn't really into anything else but guitars, or just playing guitar, then that's his thing. And so you don't have to have all these weird, interesting stories that are linked to the person. Just being himself is interesting. So it's and it's a hard dynamic, because I think a lot of us who are really passionate about being in a band want everybody in our band to all be at the same level and the same level of dedication, and it's just not realistic. We're all different people. We've all come from different places, and we've shared an interest in whatever we're doing, playing music in this case, but we've all got different backgrounds. We've got different families, different upbringings, and so we've got different outlooks on life. And so it's always a battle, and this is why so many bands break up all the time or have a revolving door of like members, because it's very hard to maintain that sort of agreement across the line. And so for me, I've calmed down over the years, where I used to get a bit frustrated with some of the guys over the years because they weren't doing as much as I was. But then I realized actually they're contributing far more than I am in other areas. And this is where I need to sort of step up and contribute more from my side. So it's just appreciating the dynamic, the unique dynamic within the band. So yeah, it's cool. And it's interesting, even you just describing your band members without me knowing them, now I've got a little bit of an understanding of who they are. And so I'm even, I mean, I will, but I'm more motivated to go and reach out to them and connect with them now just because you've made a couple of comments about them as well. So it's cool. It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and as I said, like even with like other things, like one thing that like as another thing I could say is like our guitar player and bass player Forrest and Stu are both huge gamers, and whenever they rattle on about games at rehearsal, I never know what the hell they're talking about. So I've been trying to convince them recently to start like a Twitch channel, like a Lycanthro Twitch channel. I've been trying to convince them to do that, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we have about like 5 minutes left, I guess. But I guess in closing, what I usually ask our guest, and I get this will kind of be a bit of a two-part question because they're similar. Is what are some little like techniques or tips that you've done while promoting albums that people might not think about that that you could recommend? And I guess the other thing is kind of the general thing I ask everyone is like what parting advice you can give onto some younger bands or artists who would watch this. So I guess a two-part question. So yeah.
Absolutely. So I think the big message with promoting anything is that there's no secret sauce. There's no like secret tip that's just going to make and break, you know, a situation for a particular release for an album for a band. I think sometimes the most basic, what's the opposite of glamorous? Sort of unglamorous. So, yeah, just something that's like the most basic sort of approaches are usually the most effective. And so for me, one thing that I've learned over the years, and this is so like, there's nothing special about this whatsoever, is the old school DM and connecting with people on a direct message, a private message, and it's not like a cold call. You don't want to spam people, but you want to go through and reconnect with people who have shown interest in what you're doing over the years. So for me, I'm a complete nerd. I've got like a spreadsheet where I've pulled out all the sales that we've ever had for the band over the past several years. And so I compare and see who's bought what, who hasn't bought from us for a few years, who maybe bought the last release but hasn't bought this current release yet. And I've got them on my radar. And so I'm going to contact these people before the end of the month, before release date, and say, hey, like, just in case you missed it, we've got this coming out. I know you've bought in the past. I'd hate for you to miss out because this is a limited edition release. And that's tedious. It's time consuming. It can be painful. It can even feel a little bit embarrassing because some bands would just hate doing it because it feels like I'm begging, you know. But I think it's the way you do it. And so direct messaging, and I know Monica Strutt, who's somebody else who's been part of that sort of Curtis and Matt community, who's a very smart woman when it comes to like band management, band PR, marketing, and all that sort of stuff. And I know she's made some comments about spamming and being very anti that. But I think obviously the point of difference that I think she's highlighted as well is that if you're going to message someone, have a reason to do it and have some intention. You've got to have a prior connection and something that doesn't come across as just spamming. So for me, I think a really good thing to consider is not going in too hard too quickly. You don't want to come across as too needy and too desperate. But I think what you need to do is just be very strategic and think about who are the people that are most important to your band. And that could be industry as well. You take the same approach for industry. And then just slowly work through a list of people and reach out and say, hey, how you doing? Look, no doubt you get slammed with a bunch of different things that are coming through your newsfeed or in your inbox, especially if you're working in press. Just wanted to give you a heads up that we've sent something through. Have a look. If you're having trouble accessing it, let me know, blah, blah, blah. And just, you know, it's still somewhat generic, but you're at least making the effort to connect with them. And I think because of that, people will appreciate it and you're making the effort for them. So that would be my advice as far as from a PR point of view. For young musicians, I think the biggest thing is that please don't panic and rush. We are in this world now where everything feels so instantaneous and so fast-paced, and there's a panic that I see. I mean, I felt it as well in social media, where everyone wants everything now. And so you see your peers doing great things in other bands. You go, oh man, they're about to tour or they're about to release an album. Oh, what are we doing? And you're sort of looking around going, man, we're falling behind here. But the big thing is that it takes years to establish a band, and really, I mean, at least from my point of view, I want to be in a band for as long as I possibly can. It's a part of my life. It's a part of my identity. So for me, I'm not worried about the next few weeks. I mean, it's important, but whether it's good or bad doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, because I plan, hopefully, to be in Lord for as long as I possibly can. So it's a long-term game. And I spoke to somebody the other day, just as a good example about this, where I was looking at my music collection, and I'm going to get the dates, the years mucked up, and the album, the order out of whack. But I was looking at my Blind Guardian CDs, and there was like, you know, a few years there between releases where there was just a gap. There was just no releases during that time. And looking back now, like, you know, 20, 30 odd years later, you're looking at going, well, what happened? And they're probably touring, they're probably playing with these amazing bands and doing these supports, or touring Japan, or whatever that might have been at the time. But years later, you got no idea. You're just looking at those albums on your shelf. And so when I sort of talk to other people in bands, I just say, hey man, if it takes you 2, 3, 4 years to get that next album out, cool. It is what it is, man. And in the long run, no one's going to know about those 4 years in between. No one's going to care. They're just going to look at what you actually put out. And so I think just take your time, hone your craft, be happy with what you're going to put out there. And even with PR, like if you record an album and it's all ready to go, you've got your artwork and everything, don't jump the gun. Don't go and just upload it to Spotify and just go, oh, quick, and let the world know, hey, big announcement coming next week, and then just release this debut album that no one knows about. Have a plan in place. Take 6 months to release the album. Take 12 months. Shop it around, or build some contacts with PR people and work out a strategy and take your time with it. The music can sit there. You can sit on it for a long time, and it's totally cool. It's very counterintuitive for a musician to record something, get it done, and sit on it. You want to just get it out and share it with people, but sometimes just taking the long game can be such a game changer and get a better output. So that would be my advice. Just don't panic and take your time.
Yeah, and that's a great piece of advice, because I'm sure that, and I still see it, and I'm sure you do too, is that's something that bands a lot of time do, and it sucks. And again, we're guilty of this as well. Like when we first started,
Yep.
It's just like you want to do it, and every few months or so, I'll always see a local band from here or wherever who they'll record something, and then they'll put it to Spotify, whatever, no promo, nothing, and I'm just sitting there going like, oh guys, come on, you know. And the problem is that a lot of the time, just to add on to that, is that they won't promote anything after it's out. Like after it's out, they'll like just never talk about it ever again. And I see that, and usually, like for me, usually the blunt answer is like, guys, like if you put it out and then never talk about it again, no one's gonna care, you know. So
and touring's just one part of that. Like especially with COVID and bands haven't been able to play. Touring's really important because you want to connect with people. You want to get out there and interact and sell CDs or vinyl or T-shirts at the merch table and get more people to follow your band. But if you can't do that, there's heaps of other things you can be doing. And it is about continuing to talk about your music and not just thinking, oh, well, it's out now, let's forget about it, or let's just put it to the side and start working on the next album. Keep it alive. And for us, like we put Fallen Idols out in 2019. We did a small run of shows in Australia. We had plans to go back to Japan, go to other places around the world. We had a couple of gig offers, and obviously 2020 was 2020, and none of that happened. And for me, like now, I'm just thinking, well, I can't let that album die by just going, oh, well, it's done, it's out. I'm finding ways to repurpose it. And even last year with Chaos Raining was off Fallen Idols, and it was kind of like a single of a song that was already out there and people knew about. But I was able to give it new artwork and add a new song on there and put an extended mix on there and repurpose it and make it fresh and continue to talk about the album itself. So there's so many things you can do, and I reckon I could talk to you for hours about all these ideas. As I said before, stuff I live and breathe. But yeah, that's a great piece of advice. As soon as the album's out, keep it going, keep talking about it, and keep finding ways.
Yeah, and rest assured that once me and my guys with our new stuff start coming out, rest assured I'll be coming to you for more advice as well.
Please do.
Yeah, so it's a little bit past 9, so I guess I'll over here at least. So I'll call it for now. But thank you very much for being on the show, Andy. It's been awesome getting to know you, man. And I'll just do my little thing that I say before at the end of every these. So for those of you who are still watching, go follow Andy, go follow Lord on all the platforms, everything. Buy their new cover album. Follow us at Lycanthro Metal, and we'll be announcing next week's we'll be announcing next week's guests tomorrow. So so be sure to be on the lookout for that. So, anyways, thank you very much, Andy. It was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone who's been sticking around and leaving comments as well. I haven't seen everything because it's like a tiny little window.
Yeah,
but, appreciate it. And please, guys, reach out to me, and thanks so much for having me, man. It's been, as you said, it's been great to connect and get to know each other and have a chat over this weird virtual world we all live in now. So
yeah, man. All right, yeah, well, great to see you, man. See ya.
Take care. See ya.